Hello, Manchester, and welcome to another edition of Girard at Large. I am your tan, rested, and ready host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in. As you know, you can find us online at girardatlarge.com, and you can find us on Facebook, but not Twitter anymore, and a variety of other social media platforms. Why? Well, if Twitter allows the Taliban to tweet, but not the president or the former president of the United States, that's something that I can no longer deal with. And so even though I had a couple thousand followers on my Twitter page, I will no longer feed the beast. You can catch that at girardformayor.com. I published a statement about that today. And also was pleased to post the endorsement of many more state representatives, people familiar with the city, the grassroots of the Republican Party, particularly the conservative part of the Republican Party, which I'm proud to say now my endorsements number nearly 40 local officials and others like former Senator Bob Smith and General Don Bolduc, who's going to run for the United States Senate in 2022, and former gubernatorial and U.S. Senate candidate Jim Rubens. But you can get all that at Girard for Mayor. And tonight, I'm going to be a little quick on the intro. Yes, I am. And just a little tease, you might want to pay attention to girardatlarge.com because soon we will be releasing a story about voter fraud here in the Queen City. Voter fraud that we brought to your attention during the last election cycle. The Attorney General's office has weighed in, and I'm unprepared to get into it with you now because tonight we have what many of us have been waiting for, and that is the great debate. I think I told you, was it last week? Maybe, I'm not sure if I have told you. Because last week, of course, I was away. I want to thank Patrice Bernard for hosting the show and the candidates that came on to speak with you all. I believe we had Ken Tassi, school board member from Ward 6, school board candidate from Ward 6, Nick Pigeon, who is running for school board in Ward 10, and Will Infantine, who is running for school board at large. So that was a great conversation. But tonight, as I said, we are going to debate. There is a website that has been published called manchestermayor.com. I encourage you, if you'd like to see a debate in the primary between myself and Mayor Craig and Victoria Sullivan, who was 2 years ago the primary challenger to Mayor Craig, who in recent Facebook posts bragged about her debate performance against the mayor during the last campaign. Neither of these two ladies has seen fit to engage in a debate this primary season, which I think is important for the voters. I mean, let's face it. It's, we have an incumbent mayor. You have two former elected officials, someone who, albeit ran a distant second in the election 2 years ago, was the primary challenger. There's an argument to be made that there are three, quote, big names on the ticket, and there should be a debate. But manchestermayor.com is a website that does two things. It is a petition. So if you'd like to see a debate, go to manchestermayor.com and sign the petition and ask your question. The questions that will be asked tonight come from the citizens of Manchester. And these are questions they want their candidates for mayor to answer. So, since we're eager to have the debate, I would first like to introduce immediately to my right, Mayor Joyce Craig. There she is, ready to go on the debate stage. And to her right, Victoria Sullivan, former state representative. Okay. And then, of course, there's I, your ever humble host, Rich Girard, former school board member, former alderman, former charter commissioner, former mayor's aide, one-time radio talk show host, newspaper columnist, and host of this show for 17 of the last 21 years, including since 2007. So that's 14 years running, all focused on Manchester, its issues, politics, and government. Okay, so we're going to get right into the questions here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read from the questions that are coming from this debate site. And no, I don't know who put the site up. I don't know anything about it other than somebody sent me a link to it last week. And here we are. So, and if you in the audience have a question you'd like to ask of me or Mayor Craig or former Representative Sullivan. You're free to call in at 640-3091. First question comes from Jim in Ward 8. Are you in favor of the school board having its own taxing authority? We'll start with former Representative Victoria Sullivan. Victoria? Are you in favor of the school board having its own taxing authority? Okay. Mayor Craig, how about yourself? No, nothing to say. Oh, all right. I guess we'll bring it to me. I am not in favor of the school board having its own taxing authority. Of course, you may know this past week, the Attorney General's office rejected the ballot question because it says the Attorney General's office said the city didn't follow the special law that Joyce Craig and company had pushed to revise the charter, and therefore they made no comment on the substance because they said the law and the process was violated. Now, the reason why I do not support the school board having its own authority is pretty simple. If you were to ask the police department, the fire department, the highway department, the health department, or any other department, any enterprise, any organization that receives taxpayer dollars, whether or not they would like the opportunity to set their own budget and send their own tax bill, they'd all say yes. And arguably, since the argument seems to be that the Board of Aldermen just can't, they're not experts in schools. I didn't realize they were experts in police, fire, or anything else in the community either. But so it seems to me that there shouldn't be different treatment for different parts of the city. I think the governing body, which is the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, not the school board, should be responsible for setting budgets and raising taxes or sending tax bills. And if we do it for the schools, why not do it for the police or public works or anybody else? I think it will divide the city against the schools, and I don't see anything really good coming out of it. Besides, this is just a ploy by the more money crowd to spend more money. And when you take a look at how much money has been spent or how much the per pupil increase in funding has been since 2009, between 2009 and 2020, it's a 61% increase in per pupil spending. That's 29% above inflation. I don't think we need to spend more money. I think we need to set a new direction. And I think we need a fundamental change to the school system itself. And that's what I proposed. Okay. On to our next question. This is from Jeff in Ward 6. And there are several questions about the tax cap. So we'll use Jeff as Ward 6 as the prototype. Will you protect the tax cap and vote against any override 100% of the time? I would ask a simple yes or no answer only. We'll start with you, Mayor Craig. Will you vote against any override of the tax cap 100% of the time? Yes or no? All right. How about former Representative Victoria Sullivan? That's it. Zoom in. We want to make sure people hear her. All right. For me, it's a simple answer. Yeah. Yes, I will oppose every tax cap override 100% of the time. From Paul in Ward 6, there's a lot of activity in Ward 6. What are you going to do with homeless drugs safe stations? There aren't any commas in that, but I'm going to assume that there are. We'll start with me right now. Well, I've laid out at girardformayor.com a comprehensive plan to deal with our homeless vagrancy problem and our rampant crime problem. You should know that crime in the city of Manchester is higher than in 85% of the cities across the country. We are less safe than 85% of the cities across the country, according to multiple websites. Our violent crime rate is 60% above the national average. Our property crime rate is 12% above the national average, and our overall crime rate is 20% above the national average. I worked with several former or retired, I should say, police officers, among others, to develop my crime plan. And basically, I'm going to put it to you this way, because there are several other questions about this in the same vein, is we need to change focus on how we battle crime. It's easy to get caught up in, the big stuff, the more serious stuff. But I think Rudy Giuliani proved it very well in New York, this thing called the broken windows theory. And that is when you pay attention to quality of life crimes, you see violent crimes, so-called major crimes, go down by a whole lot. The general idea is if you're paying attention to what's happening on a smaller level, on a so-called minor level, if you're dealing with the rhetorical broken windows and you're tending to them, if criminals know that people are paying attention and they're going to be watched, they tend to move on. If you don't pay attention to those crimes, then what you get is an environment that leads to bigger and better crimes. And I think that's what's happened here in Manchester, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, is there really doesn't seem to be that focus on the neighborhood crimes. Moving along. As mayor, what will you do to end gun violence? Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to ask my opponents what they will do with homelessness, drugs, and I forgot to mention safe stations. I am in favor of winding safe stations down and transitioning to what's called the State's Doorway program. And that is a statewide program. There are 9 hubs around the state where people can go and get safe station type help. The problem is nobody knows this program exists because everybody knows that Safe Station does exist. And so they come to Manchester. Still more than half the people coming to our community going through Safe Stations aren't from our community. And overall, the numbers are higher than that. With everybody locked down for COVID, fewer people from out of town came, but still a significant percentage of them did. So it's time to wind down safe stations, transition those services over to the Manchester Doorway Hub, which is at Catholic Medical Center, and then work with the state or whoever else we need to work with to make sure the statewide doorway programs and the hub areas they're located in are promoted, advertised, and known at least as well as people know safe stations. Sorry about that, Paul. I didn't mean to skip your question. So on to that question, we'll go to Victoria. Victoria, where are you with the homeless, drugs, and safe stations? All right. Sounds good. Mayor Craig, where are you on homeless, drugs, and safe stations? You can just pick one and stay there, unless you're trying to make it look like they're moving around in their seat, because I tend to fidget. And these are all coming from Manchester voters. Okay. You can find them at manchestermayor.com. All right. As mayor of Manchester, what will you do to curb gun violence without infringing on Second Amendment rights? This is from Will in Ward 11. Victoria, we'll start with you. What will you do to curb gun violence without interfering on Second Amendment rights? I see. Mayor Craig. All righty then. And I'm going to add this question to it. With recent gunfire incidents being reported throughout our city, what is your suggestion to curb violent crime, which we are being told is on a decline? Yes, a decline. Well, I personally think it's a problem when you blame the inanimate object for its use, right? Guns are no more responsible for gun crime than cars are for drunk driving. Okay, it's the people who use them, and we need to keep that in mind. When it comes to these issues, though, I think, again, I'm going to go back to my broken windows theory approach to crime. I think what we really need to do is make sure that we are dealing with those quality of life issues and crimes throughout our city, the ones that, when not dealt with, tend to create a hostile environment for decent people and a welcoming environment for those who would do things badly. This is going to take time. It's going to take a shift. It may, in fact, even take additional manpower, which I think we can find, especially if we reach out to other agencies in the area, such as the sheriff's office or other local police departments. And I'm pretty sure we can find grant money to start doing some of the things that need to be done to turn the corner on these issues. But it's not just about police officers doing more or having more police officers to do anything. It's also about engaging the community, organizing neighborhood watches, making sure people know what to look for, making sure that people who aren't from the neighborhood know that the neighborhood is being looked after by the neighbors, by the police, by even, the public works guys. I think one of the things we need to do is put attendants in our parks and trails so that there is constant vigilance by somebody associated with the city who can, A, deter people by their presence because they know they'll be watched, and B, quickly, call the police when necessary. All right. So this is from Craig in Ward 8. Mayor, we'll start with you. Please tell us why you want to be mayor. I'm gonna go next. Why do I want to be mayor? Well, in a funny way, I really don't want to be mayor. And I know that sounds strange coming from a candidate for mayor, but the reason why I'm running is because I believe I have a unique set of experiences that my background, which I addressed at the top of this debate, has provided me with. I think I have a unique set of skills. As I like to say, I know where the bodies are buried. I know who put them there, and I'll be happy to dig them up and show them as necessary to get things done. I think knowing where the city can change because you know how it operates, and you won't tolerate it operating in the ways that it continues to operate, and you're willing to get your hands dirty to get things done, is a plus in this environment. It's something I bring to the table. I'm known to do my homework. I'm known to study the issues. I'm known to get feedback and input from multiple people, and I'm known to roll up my sleeves, get my hands dirty. As I like to say, I was a strapping 6'3", 225 when I with a full head of hair when I got into politics some 30 years ago. I'm now about 5'6.5", maybe 160 pounds with not so much hair. So I've shown I can take a licking and keep on ticking, as the old, was it Timex? Timex commercial used to say. But that's why I want to be mayor. I see things that need to be fixed. I believe strongly that I can help fix them. And I feel sort of a duty or an obligation to give it my best. So my best shot, because it's my city. All right, Victoria, on to you. Please tell us why you'd like to be mayor. Yes, scintillating. Very good. All right. This is from, they only put their first initial. C in Ward 7. When and how will the behaviors of some homeless people be stopped? People won't go downtown with people laying all over the filthy sidewalks begging. This is from C in Ward 7. Mayor, you've had 4 years to deal with this issue. When and how will the behaviors of some homeless people be stopped? All righty then. How about Victoria? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, if I'm mayor, C, in Ward 7, I am going to do everything in my power to put an immediate stop to the behaviors of these homeless vagrants. The city's approach has been all carrot and no stick. We send outreach teams to these homeless camps or to otherwise meet with these individuals, which I'm fine with. But when they refuse the help, when they refuse, whether it's help with their mental health issues, whether it's help with their drug addiction issues, whether it's, getting them into a shelter, we offer them all this stuff and they say no. And then we kind of shrug our shoulders and we walk away. And it doesn't matter that they're in a park. It doesn't matter that they're in a doorway. It doesn't matter that they're on a trail. It doesn't matter any of these things. We leave them there in violation of multiple city ordinances and state laws. So what I would like to do is add a police officer detail to these outreach teams to explain that the city will now begin enforcing the code of ordinances and the state laws that are being violated, so that if they don't accept the help, and remember the purpose of this is to get people, encourage people to get the help that they need. so that we can have the police officers explain to them that if they don't accept the help, then they need to move on, because they will no longer be allowed to squat where they are and do what they're doing to defile public spaces that are detrimental to our community as a whole. So they'll need to move on and get help, or move on and out somewhere else where they aren't violating the laws. That's the short answer. I address this in a little more detail at girardformayor.com under my Getting a Handle on Homeless Vagrancy issue plank. So, Noah from Ward 6. A lot of people in Ward 6. In order for me to stay and live in Manchester, there needs to be more quote-unquote starter homes or more affordable rent prices for young adults starting out in the workforce. What will the candidates do to alleviate the rising rent and housing costs? We'll start with Victoria on this one. Fascinating. Mayor Craig. And we want to make sure, yeah, good. We want to make sure she's in full focus. I know, poor Kyle, he's got to go back and forth from these things with one camera. All right. Thank you, Mayor Craig. For myself, look, I got to be honest with you. I don't believe that people are moving to our very expensive suburbs from Manchester to find more affordable housing. The houses in all of the surrounding towns cost significantly more than they do here in the city, and the rents at their, what apartments they have are more expensive. So I think we need to come to grips with the idea that Manchester is far more affordable than the rest of the surrounding area. Now, that having been said, we do have an issue here in the city with prices of rent and homes having risen dramatically. And the way I look at it is a supply and demand problem, right? So prices go up when there is scarcity, and they come down when there is more of whatever it is on the market. So my plan simply is to bring together a working group, a task force, if you will, of developers that will review the city's code obligations, the city's regulations. That's the word I'm looking for. We'll review the city's regulations, and its enforcement practices, and that's a big one, and come up with ways of streamlining the codes, the regulations, and the enforcement practices so that it is more cost effective and simple to develop housing here in the city. I also think that we need to take a look at adaptive reuses of buildings. We have many, many old buildings here in the city of Manchester, and I think the codes are unreasonable, especially when you're converting them into housing and what they expect these buildings to do. I think we can make them safe and functional without making pretend they were built in 2021 when they were built in 1921 or 1891 or even earlier. More than a third of our housing, by the way, was built before 1931. That's a big number. So I think if you clear the decks for the private sector to meet the demand, you will see more supply come onto the market, and more supply means lower prices. Okay, Rebecca in Ward 7. Day one, what is the first thing you want to change? I'll start that one. The first thing I want to change on day one is the direction of the city. I want to be very upfront about what I believe the causes of our issues are, and I want to have a singular focus on the solutions. Now, I've proposed what I believe are viable solutions, and you can get them at girardformayor.com on a whole range of issues. But ultimately, leadership matters. And one thing that's been sorely lacking at City Hall is cooperative leadership. There's all kinds of talk about bipartisanship and working together. But at the end of the day, Joyce Craig has played favorites with appointments to committees. I remember what she did to me on the school board and several other people who were not considered her allies in the committee assignments. To me, it doesn't matter whether you like someone or you're friends with them or they're your, quote, political allies. What matters to me is what are their capabilities and qualifications to do the job, and we should proceed from that premise. So we need to be We need to remove the personalities. We need to remove the poisonous attitudes, and we need to be focused on the job at hand, which is resolving these issues, and be willing to work with friend or foe alike, personal like or personal dislike, irregardless, and get to the bottom of it. And I think that's been sorely lacking. And since I brought the mayor up, I'm going to turn it over to her for a response. And Victoria, the first thing you want to change. Okie dokie. And if you'd like to get in on this and ask the candidates a question, our number here is 640-3091. That's 640-3091. We'll gladly let you have a shot at the questions. Okay. David in Ward 1. What is your plan on working with department heads with better street maintenance and overall cleanliness of the city? Also, improved police response to lower level crimes and better control of traffic and vehicle inspection laws. Enforcement appears almost non-existent. Peoria, Illinois crime study is a perfect example of what would occur with motivated traffic enforcement. We'll start with you on this one, Victoria. All right. Mayor Craig, your response. It's hard for me to remain objective sitting here, but I'll do my best. For myself, I'd like to say, David, I don't know if you've read my crime plan, but I actually cite that Peoria, Illinois study in my crime plan, which is at girardformayor.com. It was fascinating. It was back in the middle 90s, and there are a lot of similarities in terms of demographic and size between Peoria and Manchester, and not just the two cities, but their metropolitan areas. It was really kind of a fascinating read. But what Peoria did to get a handle on its out-of-control violent crime problem is they did, we'll use your term, motivated traffic enforcement. They did sustained, targeted traffic enforcement routinely and relentlessly, and they saw their violent crime rates crash. One of the retired police officers that I worked with in developing my plan actually said I understated the value of traffic enforcement and trying to bring down major crimes. So if it's me, I'm going to be focused not just on getting something like that up and running, but I'm also going to be focused exactly on those so-called lower level crimes, because those are really the quality of life ones that annoy people to a point where they leave the city. And, for as much as people talk about people leaving the city for schools, because of schools, and that's true, they also leave because of these crimes, these nuisance crimes, these quality of life crimes that just make it unpleasant for them to live where they are. So I will bring that, my priority will be on that broken windows sort of approach to it. And in terms of better street maintenance and overall cleanliness of the city, frankly, we could do a whole lot better than that. One of the things that I would consider looking at is, especially in the downtown, the money from the Central Business District tax assessment that goes to in-town Manchester. I would like to see more of those funds go towards maintenance. It kind of struck me the other day. I was downtown, and I was around the Pearl Street parking lot, and what a mess. The weeds growing out of the tree beds, the sidewalk, the curbing. It looked like a horror show. And these are the types of things that create an environment where crime thrives, frankly. Sweeping the streets, pulling the weeds, fixing taking care of the dead and broken trees, making sure the medians are maintained, the flower beds are maintained, all of the stuff that we plant to look pretty. We make sure it stays pretty and tended to. I think we need to start rethinking how we're doing these things. And I think there needs to be a priority put on park maintenance and right-of-way maintenance so that the city looks like somebody gives a damn, which clearly in places right now it doesn't. So, okay. Herman from Ward 5. As mayor of Manchester, do you pledge to enforce a tax cap? Victoria. Mayor Craig, do you pledge to enforce a tax cap? She always has that coy little smile. I guess we call that the happy warrior. Okay. For me, yes, I will not support any budget that overrides the tax cap. And here's, a difference, I think, between the candidates here. That is, Mayor Craig has been part of every single tax cap override that this city has experienced. Whether she's been the mayor or she was an alderman, she has never flinched at an opportunity to override the tax cap. I will not do that. But I think if you're going to say you're not going to support an override of the tax cap, you have to be a credible threat to maintain spending and control. And this is where my experience comes in, because I did work on 3 budgets as a budget director for former Mayor Wazorek. As an alderman, I proposed 2 of my own. And as a member of the school board, I was chairman of the finance committee for 2 years, where I worked directly on 2 school budgets and indirectly on 2 more as a member of the finance committee for 4 years, and then, of course, the board for 4. So I understand the numbers in this city. I know how the budget process works. I know exactly how I'd run the budget process because I've done it before. And I think it's about time that somebody who's not afraid to ask questions or push back on what the departments are saying, or more importantly, push for different ways to do things, or ask the question about whether or not something needs to be done at all, is at hand. I have that experience. I have done that in my history, and I will certainly do that as mayor. So thank you for the question, Herman in Ward 5. All right. We have 2 questions. Okay. The teachers, this is from Jennifer in Ward 2. Oh, we will suspend that question while we wait to see who's calling in. Hopefully it's a real question. All right. So it looks like the question's coming through. We have Ryan. Ryan, thanks for calling into this debate between the primary contestants. Hello? Hi, Ryan. Thanks for calling in to this debate between the contestants for mayor in the September 21st primary. What's your question for the candidates?
Well, you're talking about being involved in some of the negotiating or whatever, and I was wondering, who brought the Jaeger-Decker in? Wasn't that you and Wazorek that started that?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. The Jaeger-Decker was brought in by Mayor Wazorek. I was not working in his office at the time. I was on the board of aldermen, and I did vote for the Jaeger-Decker study because of how it was presented to us and what it would do. There was supposed to be a merit system. Every employee was going to be ranked based on their performance, and a certain percentage of them would get merit raises based on their performance. So they'd all have performance evaluations. Unfortunately, what we were told did not match how it actually worked. And when I found out about how it worked was in the budget, because I saw the budget numbers on salaries change dramatically. And as I dug into it, I discovered it was because of what Jaeger-Decker did. And so that being the case, I was the only alderman at the time to vote against the fireman's contract, because the fireman's contract was the very first one that implemented the Jaeger-Decker pay scale. And once we figured out through the budget and that contract how it worked, I actually voted against implementing it in those instances. So, yeah, it was one of those things where what we were told and what we got were 2 different things. And I learned a very valuable lesson about that, Ryan, because at the time, the study itself, what we were asked to approve, was dropped on us the night of the vote. So we didn't actually have an opportunity to go through it and read it and really sort of question it. So we took the representations that were being made by the human resources director and the mayor at the time about how it was going to work. Those proved not to be true. And once I figured it out anyway, I didn't support contracts that implemented it. I want to give a shout out though to the firemen.
To this day, though.
Yeah, it does. And the reason why it continues to this day is because it got negotiated into every single city contract. So even if we were to change the ordinances on Yager Decker, we still have the problem of it being negotiated into the contracts. So it's going to have to be negotiated out of them. And along that line, I do want to say that the firemen were very honorable. It's kind of funny. Jean Brassard, who was the president of the union at the time, when we were in non-public session discussing their contracts, he said that he figured out from the questions that I was asking that I figured out how Yager Decker was really working, and they decided to drop the rest of their objections to the contract and ratify it so that I didn't have a chance to teach the rest of the board how to do it and undo what they did. But when the calculations were done, they actually found a mistake that the city made in calculating the new salary scale. And it cost the city $800,000 more the way the city did it than the way the firemen said it was supposed to be done. So I got to give credit to the fire guys because they were honest about the mistake and they didn't want to be seen as pulling a fast one over the city. The city said the firemen were wrong. They ratified the contract with the $800,000 mistake. Then they realized that the firemen were right, but because that $800,000 mistake in their contract was ratified, that mistake got built into every single contract that followed the firemen. So how do you...
So, today, though, does it continue today?
What's that?
Does it continue to this day, though?
Yep, it does.
Is it being done the way it's supposed to be done now?
No, because, what's happened, too, is over the years, the aldermen have made multiple changes to Yager Decker, and they essentially eliminated the merit system altogether, and they made a variety of other changes to positions here and positions there. So it's probably time for us to take a look at having another classification study. But I will tell you this, and I did this when I was chairman of the negotiations committee on the schools. There are things that fundamentally need to change in the compensation package we have for our employees. And I will be very, very tough-minded, hard-nosed, I guess the term is, in pursuing those changes. We did have some success in making changes at the school district. The principals union and the paraprofessionals union both adopted changes that the school district wanted to correct a number of issues. I think those were good bargaining sessions that went back and forth. It was a contract that I think both groups were happy with. We put many of the same items on the table with the teachers, but the teachers did what the teachers did. They waited for me to leave office, and then they negotiated a horrendous deal, both for the city and themselves, after I left office. But negotiations will be at the top of my list because, frankly, that's where the overwhelming percentage of our money in this city goes. And there are ways that we can both improve things for our employees and our taxpayers, but it's going to take some determined, deliberate bargaining.
Well, thank you very much for your answer. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your call, Ryan. Thank you very much. And if you'd like to ask a question, it's 640-3091. Okay. So the question I was going to was from Jennifer in Ward 2. The teachers union is too powerful and does not act to the students' best interest. How do we change this? Mayor Craig, who's been endorsed by the teachers union, how are you going to change the behavior of the teachers union so that it's more in line with student needs? I see. Victoria Sullivan, how do we change the power of the teachers union to act in students' best interests? Alrighty then. My answer is simple. It's the proposal that I have created for a public school choice program here in the city. And the reason why I say that is, look, right now your schools are controlled by two things. The bureaucracy on one hand, which has exploded over the last 4 years, and the teachers union on the other. And they have, well, the tail's been wagging the dog for the last 4 years on that one. So what you need is a different structure. You need a different system, because there's no fiddling around the margins with this. Now, as chairman of negotiations, we pushed a hard bargain. We really did, to try to get some of the fundamental structural changes that need to happen, not only to better control costs, but to better enable the day-to-day management of the school district. But absent that, a fundamental sort of restructuring of the schools, I think, is in order. And my plan to create a public school choice system that enables members of the community, but primarily enables our teachers to create options and have buy-in in the schools that they teach in. They come up with the educational program. If you believe, as I do, that our individual teachers, I'm not talking about the union here, I'm talking about the individual teachers, right? Have the talent and the expertise, the desire to create better educational options for our kids than the district could ever hope to create on its own. And if you believe that in doing so, you give the teachers buy-in or say in the school that they're part of, and give them the incentive to create and reward them for doing it. How do you reward them? Well, when little Johnny or little Susie go to the school that has their program, right, the school district will pay the Manchester Public School, no other schools, no charter schools, no private schools, no parochial schools, just Manchester Public Schools, that kid's tuition, right? So almost everybody's a tuition student, if you look at it this way, because you're not, for example, I live near Smith Road School. If, my little math-brained son likes the robotics program that, Gosler Park created, then my little math-brained son can go to Gosler Park. And if he does that, the district will pay Gosler Park for my little math-brained son to be at Gosler Park. So Gosler Park has got an interest now not only in producing results that will make me, the parent, happy, and providing an environment and a program that will, be interesting and challenging and fun for my kid. If the school is unresponsive to our concerns, then maybe there's a program at Parker Varney that will also be good for my little math brain son. And we decide, okay, well, you're going to go to Parker Varney now. And so that money is going to follow you to Parker Varney. So you have to change the structure. You have to engage individual teachers in the creation of individual educational programs and provide for them incentives and rewards for doing that. So that they're working with parents and principals at the school level to do something, rather than having to be part of this, big union bureaucracy on one hand that interacts with the big bureaucracy of the school district on the other, to try to figure out how everybody's going to get along. So I think if you change the structure, you change the dynamic, right? What's the old saying? You can't change anybody, but change yourself, and it will change how they react to you. So I think we need to change the system. Okay. This is from Patrick in Ward 2. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, we already did that. So Patrick in Ward 2 says, campaign rhetoric often includes the term working together. Can you elaborate on your record of working with groups or individuals of political parties and ideological views which differ from your own? We'll start with Victoria on this one. Thank you. All right, Mayor Craig, can you elaborate on your record of working with groups or individuals of political parties and ideological views which differ from your own? Mayor Craig. Okay. Thank you, Mayor Craig. Yes, thank you for the question, Patrick. I can, and I'll go back to my chairmanship of the negotiations committee when I was on the school board last term. So that included myself, who many accuse of being a charter member of evilconservative.com. It included Ward 8's Jimmy LaHoo and Ward 7's Ross Terrio, both Republicans, but probably not as conservative as myself. And that also included Ward 1's Sarah Ambrosi, who's a pretty liberal Democrat, and then Kate DeRosier from Ward 11, who is definitely a left-wing apparatchik. And the first thing that I did when I was named chairman of that committee after John Avard resigned was call every single member of the committee. And I said flat out, I said, look, we have to figure out how to work together. There are issues that the district needs to attack. What are your perspectives? What are your thoughts? Where are you on the process? What would you like to see going forward? And I had that conversation, among other points, with every single member of the committee. And from there, we worked together on the issues. I made sure that the committee knew what issues the district needed to have resolved. We also met with the broader school board to get every single school board member's concerns with the contract in the district, out on the table to make sure that we were leaving no stone unturned. And from there, we focused really solely on what the problem was and what the potential solutions to the problems were. And every single action that committee took over my chairmanship, which ultimately included Kathleen Kelly from Ward 2 after Kate DeRosier was removed from the committee for basically blaming the committee for the failure to get a contract during an election year and just being ridiculously political. But we were able as a group to find common ground on literally every proposal we made, every response we gave to the teachers or any of the other unions, and everything we did as a committee. Now, that doesn't mean that it's impossible for everybody to have gotten everything that they wanted. And there were significant disagreements between members of the committee on what should be done in any number of areas. But because we were focused on resolving the problem, which I must say, by the way, included giving the teachers and all of the other unions an open airing, the opportunity to air the grievances. What do you want to accomplish? What do you think needs to be fixed? That also went into our calculations on how to do things. We were able to present a united front, stick together through some very challenging times, including a union-backed assault on our committee by the mayor. No, you did, Joyce. Anyway, that's where it came in. So I would use that as one of many examples that I could do. Another example that I have is, the compromise that I was able to pull together to keep City Year funded in our district. But I'm out of time, so we have to move on. Thank you for the question, Patrick in Ward 2. Okay. Why does it seem that this is from Lisa in Ward 11. Why does it seem that when there are so many streets and other items in need of desperate repair in the city, they only magically happened right before the primary elections, especially in the last few elections? Why are the other two candidates afraid to debate in the primary? Do they have nothing to run on or stand for? Well, I'll start this one, Lisa, and say they're both here. So it's not correct that they're afraid to debate. They're right here. If you'd like, you can call in and ask them a question. But, the streets, there are definitely things that happen in the city in an election year, like they'll avoid overriding the tax cap at all cost in an election year. Homeless camps seem to be cracked down on in election years. The road work, I'm not sure that's an election year thing, to be perfectly honest with you. It's a 2-year cycle. It's hard to know. But thank you for the question. Do either of you ladies have anything you'd like to add to this? Mayor, Victoria? No? Okay. Linda in Ward 10 asks, should the office holder become an independent when governing, leaving behind the ideology of Republicans, Democrats, and Libertarians, knowing they represent many different labels? Interesting question, Linda in Ward 10. We'll start with you, Victoria. I see. Okay. Mayor Craig, maybe you could talk a little bit about your record on this too. Thank you. Thank you. For myself, no, I don't think it's necessary for people to change their party affiliations and register as independent. For myself, I can tell you that I am a conservative Republican and I will likely govern that way. But you need to understand what that means, because for me, it's not so much an ideology as it is a process. It's a way of looking at things. It's a way of thinking about things. And I think that's why sometimes Republicans are often at odds with each other, because you can look at the same set of facts and you can go through your own personal filters or processes to determine what the, where you want to go with it. And you can end up in entirely different places. So for me, it's a process. It starts with, is this something the city should even be involved with? If so, does the city need to be a provider, or can it be a facilitator? In other words, can it farm it out? How do we do it in the most limited, cost-effective way possible? Is this a permanent thing? Is it a long-term thing? What are the results that we're going to be looking for to determine whether or not it's successful? There are a whole list of questions that could come up at any given time that we assess, right? Or that at least I would assess. Now, there are differences in the ways that Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, and liberals look at things, but that's what elections are for. And if you elect somebody based on what they say they're going to do or why they're going to do it, then you should expect them to do that, because the election in and of itself is an endorsement of what they campaigned on. So to all of a sudden pretend that you're an independent because you represent the entire city isn't going to fundamentally change how anybody goes about the process. But thank you for the question. Okay, Colette in Ward 2, what do you think the most pressing issue that Manchester faces is? What would you do to address this issue? Mayor Craig, we'll start with you. You've had 4 years at the helm. What's the most pressing issue the city faces? Mm-hmm. All right. Victoria Sullivan. Okay. Myself, I think the most important the most important issue we face is leadership. Leadership that's honest, leadership that is focused on the actual data, the actual facts, and focused on solutions and being willing to work with anyone and everyone, an all hands on deck mentality to get things done. I think we've seen too many committees and not enough action. I think we've seen too much blame on things such as lack of resources, or the tax cap not allowing us to raise the resources, or the state not doing what we think the state should do, or other communities not thinking what other communities should do. We need to take ownership of what we have done, what we haven't done, what we can do, and what we should do in order to turn things around here in the city. What do you think is the most important character trait to have when running for office? This is from somebody in Ward 4. Name starts with an M. Sorry, my printer kind of cut it off at the bottom. Victoria, what do you think is the most important character trait to have when you're running for office? Mayor Craig, what do you think the most important character trait is when running for office? All righty then. Fascinating. Myself, I think it's integrity. And what I mean by integrity is doing what you say you're going to do, meaning what you say, and doing what you say you're going to do. I think that's the most important thing. And I think people are cynical about politics and politicians because so often they're told what they want to hear, but the reality is entirely different. I know, how I've raised my kids is you take a look at what they say and you measure it against what they've done. If what they say is different than what they've done, then you pay attention to what they've done, because that tells you who they are and what they believe. And the other stuff is an indication of them saying what you want to hear. And it's amazing how much more conservative everybody gets in an election year, and then they go and do whatever they want when they get elected. Fortunately, I have a track record. You can take a look at my record, and I think you'd be pretty hard-pressed to find examples of where what I said I would do was different than what I did. Okay. Richard in Ward 3, I would like to see Joyce Craig, Rich Girard, and Victoria Sullivan have a debate on the mayoral election. Richard, we're all here. Would you like to call 640-3091 and ask a question? Okay. Thomas in Ward 6, will you as mayor stick to the tax cap when negotiating the teachers' union contract? I'm going to start that one, Richard. I will tell you that I insisted on that when I was chairman of negotiations. And we did not budge off of that. And many of the scenarios we put together regarding the teacher's contract, their compensation package, was tied directly. They were all, everything we did was tied directly to whether or not it would stay within the tax cap. Mayor Craig, who agreed to a contract that required one-time money to fund it. Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing that with us, Mayor Craig. Victoria. I see. All right. It looks like we have time for one more question. This comes from Greg in Ward 3. And this, by the way, is just a sampling of the questions that were on the website, which is manchestermayor.com. Sign the petition and ask your question. Who knows? We might have another debate next week. What are you going to do about graffiti vandalism in Manchester? Mayor, go! Zoom out a little bit, little less paperclip. We want people to see the mayor standing and addressing her audience. There we go. Thank you. No. Victoria, what are you going to do about graffiti vandalism in Manchester? Alrighty then. Myself, what I will do about it is, I think we need to beef up the city's capability in this area. There needs to be instant removal. But, it bothers me when I see all of these painted rocks like down by the river or these painted bridge abutments and all this other stuff because we need to find, and I know it exists, we need to start treating the surfaces that are often tagged with something that doesn't allow the paint to penetrate. So you can basically hose it off or a good rainstorm will take it down. The other thing we need to do is we need to adopt an ordinance, frankly, that requires private property owners to remove graffiti from their property once they're notified that the graffiti is there. Now, whether the city does that for a modest fee or just the permission of the home of the property owner to do it, or there's some other enforcement mechanism, this has been done successfully in multiple communities around the country, and you can find examples of it at girardformayor.com under my plan to reduce crime and protect neighborhoods. All right, that is the primary debate here on the Girard at Large show. We want to thank Mayor Craig and Victoria Sullivan for joining us here to discuss the issues that you folks in the city of Manchester have brought up. ManchesterMayor.com is where you can sign the petition and ask your questions, or at least make the questions you'd like asked in a debate known. I am tonight's debate and show host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in. Until next week, be good, be well. Don't do anything we wouldn't do. We're proud to have the audience. Thanks for being there. Until next week, be good.